Okay, good evening and welcome to Shiva YouTube, just Daf It. Now we're doing tonight's Daf. The Dharam Nun Gimel 53, the third of 8 Shiurim for tonight for me. I have to give 4 Daf Yomi Shiurim, two Dafim and 2 Ian Shiurim, and then 2 Mishnah Shiurim and 2 Ian Mishnah Shiurim. So, let's get right into it. Nun Gimel Manalf, the Mishnah. Hanoder Minat Tmarim, taking another from dates. Mutter B'dvash Tmarim. You're allowed to have honey that comes out of dates. Because, as we saw in the previous mission on base, if you take another from grapes, right, you're allowed to have a wine that comes out of it. Normally, it's not included. You took another from grapes that are late-growing grapes, which are not going to be used for their grape juice. They're going to use for their vinegar. They turn into vinegar. You're allowed to get benefit from the vinegar because you aster the grapes. You didn't aster the vinegar that comes out. Or Yehuda Misera Omer, Kol Shem told us a Kriol of V'noder Emanu aser, right? Chometz advanios. They're called vinegar of the late-growing grapes. Dvash tmarim, right? Date honey. It includes the name of the parent fruit in the product. So therefore, as long as it's includes it in the name, so therefore you see it's included in the neder also, according to Rebbe Meseir. If you took a neder from tmarim, dvash tmarim would be aser. Now I think he would agree in a case like anovim and yayin, because yayin is not called anovim, but grape juice would be. That's the interesting thing. If you call it grape juice, that's the thing, but wine is a different name. So you don't say what he motivated wine. Olive oil would also be like grape juice. It would be included. Again, Rebbe Meseir is not the accepted halacha. The Chum Matirim, Chum Matir. Seemingly the Chum are the Tanakama. We'll see the difference in the Gemara. The Gemara says Chum Hainu Tanakama. They're the same opinion. Ikaminaya, there's a difference between Hada the Tanya. Where do we find the difference? The Bryce says Kal Zamra Shimon Lazar. Shimon Lazar. He says the following: Kol Darcha Lechol v'Darcha Yotze Meno Lechol. A food which normally is consumed by itself, and the extract which comes out of it is also consumed. Going tmarim, v'Dvash tmarim, right? You have the figs. Sometimes you eat dates. And you eat honey from dates. Another bow, aser biyotze menu. If you took a nether from the dates, you're also aser in the honey that comes out of the dates. Another biyotze menu, aser bow. If you took a nether from the honey that comes out of the dates, you're also aser in dates themselves. If you don't actually eat the actual parent fruit, but you do eat what comes out of the extract, no der bow ain't aser ela biyotze menu. If you took a nether from, like the case in the Mishnah, you have these grapes which are only going to use to make vinegar. So if you took another from the grapes, you're only aser b'yotzim menu, the vinegar that comes out. This person only has kavana for yotzim menu, right? Dates can be used to eat whole. A lot of people here in Israel seem to like dates. I don't know why anyone would like dates. They don't taste good. I think the only time people actually eat them on Rosh Hashanah when they wanted the simonim. And people like date honey. Dates are actually good. I have to say this. My wife makes a lot of shakes. I bought her this Ninja, Shark Ninja mixer. Yeah, it's a mixer. 1,100 kilowatts. It's really good. You take these frozen strawberries, frozen blueberries, dates. You just throw them in there. You turn it on for like 3 seconds, and it makes like a smoothie for you. Pretty good. And honey and date honey, actually, you put dates in there, it's like better than sugar. Sugar like too sweet. It's like a perfect sweet. So dates are actually good for their honey or for their taste in a smoothie. But eating them whole or honey that comes out of them, I don't think people use bee honey. They don't really use date honey. So how do we explain this? So Shimon Lazar is one of the opinions over here. We have Chachamim and we have the Tanakama. So the way it goes like this. Our school says the sages concur with the view of Shimon and Elazar. The Chamim, right? The Chamim don't say what they are, so they hold like Rosh Shimon ben Elazar, right? Shimon ben Elazar says that certain times, right, when you aser a parent fruit, the extract is also included if both of them are normally consumed by themselves. And that's the case by Dvash. The Chacham only argue, or Shimon Lazar only argues on Rahim Meseira in the case of Chometz Tzidvaniot, in the case of the vinegar. But when it comes to Dvash, he's more than Rahim Meseira that both are aser. According to Tanakama, no matter, even if both are eaten independently, you're only asher in what you asher. If you asher tomorrow, you're not asher in the honey that comes from dvash tomorrow, even though they're both normally consumed. Mishnah says, "Another ben ayayin mutter b'yayin tapuchim." We took a neder from wine. Right, wine usually means from grapes, so you're allowed to have yayin tapuchim. Now, I went to someone's house on Friday night, and he served cider, apple cider, which is basically fermented apples. Um, so after it's funny that I went to his house because I didn't even think I might have heard of apple cider, but I didn't really think ever see it. I tasted it; it wasn't so bad. So I would have said yain tapuchim is mean to apple juice, but yain is alcohol, so I would say it's apple cider because apple cider is not included in wine. Most people don't drink apple cider. Min hashemen mutter b'shemen shum shum. We're talking either from oil, so you're allowed to have sesame oil because oil, we'll see, according to the Tanakh Mishnah, usually means olive oil. Dvash mutter b'dvash shmar. If you take another from honey, you're allowed to have honey that comes from dates, because usually when honey people eat is bee honey. Mina chometz mutter b'chometz tzedvonios. You take another from vinegar, you're allowed to have vinegar that comes from late growing grapes. That's not where most vinegar comes from. It comes from regular grapes and into vinegar. Mina krishin mutter b'kafluto. If you took another from krishin are leeks. Leeks are another way of saying spring onions. I think they are green onions. Leeks are spring onions. I think. Mutter b'kafluto. Kaflutot are green onions. There's only spring onions and green onions. Scallions is another way of saying green onions. But spring onions and green onions are different things, and that's what the Mishnah is saying there. Even though they're similar things, one does not include the other. Min hayerek mutter biyarakos hasada. If you take another from vegetables, you're allowed to have wild vegetables that somehow grew in the field. Shehu shem livoy, right? Because the extra word yarkos hasada, right, gives definition to it, right? When I took another from yarak, vegetables, I meant cultivated vegetables. The fact that it has an accompanying word shows it's something else. Tanya, I know them in Hashem and Be'eretz Yisrael, mutter b'shem and shum shemit. The Brisa says if you take another from oil in Eretz Yisrael, so you're allowed to have sesame oil, also b'shem and zayis. Most people in Eretz Yisrael use olive oil. It's very prevalent in Eretz Yisrael to cook with olive oil. Maybe the rich people. With Bavel, which is a poor place, also b'shem and shum shemit, you can't have. When you take another from shemen, what you mean is the sesame seed oil. Mutter b'shemen. Zayit, you're allowed to benefit from olive oil. I think most places use both olive oil and sesame seed oil or canola oil. Asr b'zeh was that. Then when you say shemen, you include everything. Pshita. This is obvious. Most of the people are not rich, and they use sesame oil, canola oil. They're not using olive oil. Go after rove, and therefore olive oil shouldn't be included. Kamash Malan, Savik Yisur, L'chumra, and Nedarim are Yisurim, so therefore you go Savik L'chumra. Now this Gemara makes no sense, because usually that's the concept of the idea of rove. Is when I have a suffix, I use rove. So if most of the people in that place, don't use this type of oil, shouldn't be included in your nether, what does the Gemara mean? Savik Yisur, L'chumra. Rove determines, doesn't just tell you how to act in a case of suffix. It actually is mavarer. It clarifies what you should be doing with a degree of certainty. So this Gemara makes no sense. And the Rishonim deal with it. And I'll give you my explanation in Iyad Ben Sion. So stick around for that. Another ben Yarak b'shar shnei shavua asir yirakas agina during the first 6 years of Shemitah. Right here we're talking about Eretz Yisrael. So if you took another from vegetables, you can't have vegetables that were cultivated, because that's what you meant. You're allowed to have wild vegetables, cucumbers that grew by themselves in the field. You didn't include them. With Shvius, right? You can't grow, you can't plant your own vegetables. So when you took a nether from your rakos on Shvius, so the only ones that were permissible to eat are the ones that grew by themselves in the field. So those are what you meant to aser. And if they were legally grown in the Gina, they were cultivated, so then you're allowed to have them, even though he did an Isser by growing them. Well, let's say a non-Jew grew them, then it'll be okay. I'm going to read about Mishur Mechani ben Gamliel. He's the name of Rabao, says the name of Mechani ben Gamliel, on top of Mengamon Beis. Lo Shana Lo Makom Shein Mevin Yarak Mechutz La'aretz La'aretz. We're only talking about a certain place in Israel where they don't import vegetables during Shemitah from Chutz La'aretz. Now, I lived here, we just had a Shemitah year, and the makola, the convenience store across the street, is full of vegetables. They're called chul that come from chutz la'aretz. So apparently, I live in a place where they do bring chul. I guess there are places that don't. We'll see. The Gemara says a reason why. In a place where they bring from chul, so therefore, even though I said yarek, I meant also cultivated vegetables because you could cultivate them, you could grow them outside of Eretz Yisrael and bring them to Eretz Yisrael. That's not part of Shemitah. Versus the Kitanai. That machlokes is the same machlokes as the following time machlokes. In Mavin Yarek Chutz La'aretz. Right? Rechanina Gamliel throws a wrench over here. He says it depends if they bring or not bring. So the Gemara says Rechanina Gamliel's opinion is subject to dispute, right? One opinion, the right says Ein Mavin Yarek Chutz La'aretz. Right? You're not allowed to bring on Shemitah. You're not at any time. You're not supposed to bring vegetables from outside Eretz Yisrael, even during Shemitah. Says you do bring. Obviously, we hold it. My time of the mandam rain Mavia. What's the reason to aser? Because a lot of times when you bring vegetables, you have the dirt, the clod of dirt underneath them when you bring, and that is too much eretz amim. Things dirt. The rabbanim goes there too much midrabanan on dirt that comes from chutz la'aretz because they don't want you to live in chutz la'aretz. So therefore, if you come in contact with the dirt of chutz la'aretz, made you tamei midrabanan. Nowadays we're not makbid on tumah, so that's probably why you paskin like that you're allowed to bring vegetables from outside Israel because we're all tamei meis. The Mishnah says min akruv aser b'asparagus. Take another from not to get benefit from cabbage. You're allowed to have asparagus. Now they translate asparagus. A lot of weird translations. Asparagus is called asparagus. There's really a vegetable called asparagus, which is the same family as cabbage. I don't know how all the Mefarshim missed this one, but I'm not going to be an idiot. An asparagus mutar b'kruv. If you took an eder from asparagus is a more high class. Only when you have those fancy vegetable boards do you have asparagus over there. I have a lot of problem with bugs, I think. So if you say cabbage, right? Obviously you'd want to, right? You're not going to want to have, you include asparagus. But if you just took asparagus, mutar b'kruv, saying only the specialty foods, the gourmet food I'm not going to have, but the basic food, cabbage, something which is basic for a salad and things like that you wouldn't aser. Mina grisen, I'll translate it like they do, as grits. Grits is not something that I grew up with, but apparently it's some porridge that's made from cornmeal. They make it very popular in the South in America. Aser b'makveh. Now, what does makveh mean? Makveh means a pottage. Ashkel translate. I looked this up. There's something called hominy grits. There's grits, regular grits, and hominy grits is where you treat the corn before you make it into a porridge. So it's a higher class type of grits, hominy grits and regular grits. Just like asparagus is a higher class than regular cabbage. So if you took another from Greek grits, so you're including hominy grits also. Riosi says no, honey grits are not included. Mina makveh mutar b'grisa. However, you just said it from hominy grits, obviously regular grits you didn't want to aser. Mutar b'grisa. Mina makveh you took from hominy grits, aser b'shum. You're aser from tasting shum because hominy grits probably are. It's not just treating the corn. You also add a little garlic. It's grits that have a lot of spices in them. One of them is garlic, and therefore you meant to aser anything with it. Anything used to spice up the makveh, and therefore garlic is aser. Yossi says it's okay. Mina shum mutar b'makveh. If you took another from shum, so mutar b'makveh. As long as there's no shum in the makveh. Mina adashim aser b'ashishim. You took another from adash from lentils. You aser b'ashishim. Ashishim, that I mentioned in Daf Nun Beis, I believe means honey that's cooked with lentils to get the taste of lentils in the honey. So you're aser b'ashashim. Rabbi Yossi matir. Rabbi Yossi says it's mutar. Again, like his svara over here, because it's not the same thing. It's honey that was cooked with lentil, but it's not lentils itself. And the Rabbanan say, no, it is included. However, you took another from ashishim, you're mutar ba'adashim, because lentils are very different than the higher class honey, which is cooked with lentils, which is probably what you're supposed to be made to be used for. No one eats lentils by themselves. Lentil soup is considered low class, so adoma zeh. from Yaakov, ate it when he was mourning. It's made to be cooked with honey to impart the taste of adashim, right? All foods that are low class foods, there's a purpose that God created them, and that's to give spice to something else. Chita chitin shani toim also behen b'mekemach ben hapas. If you take a neder from, you take two words, chita in the singular, and chitin, right? Wheat and wheats, right? I'm not gonna taste either of them. You can't eat them, whether the flour, the chew on flour. I don't know why you chew on flour. Ben hapas, or you cook bread out of it. You can't eat grease and shani toim. Similarly, you said singular grit and grits together. You said both of them. Also behen ben chayim and mushal. You can't have it raw. You can't have it cooked in a porridge. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Konam gris ochita shenitoim mutar lakus chayim. However, if you said just the singular gris ochita, right? So we'll see you're allowed to chew it raw, because when you say it, when you want to answer the raw, you would say chitin. You don't normally eat one piece of corn by itself or one piece of wheat by itself raw. You'd chew a couple of them. So if you want to answer it raw, you would say grisin or chitin. Gris al chita usually means a pot of grits, or a bowl of grits, or a bowl of farina from wheat. Gemara says, Tanya, Shimon ben Gamliel Omer chita shenitoim aser lafos umutar lakus. This is basically everyone's echoing the sentiment of Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. If you just say chita, right, so you can't bake it into it, right? Chita can mean a bowl of farina or a loaf of bread, right? A mutar lakus, you can chew it, right? Chitim shani toim. If you say the plural, just that, aser lakus, you can't chew it raw. Mutar laapos, you could bake it into a loaf of bread. It's not plural; it's just one loaf of bread. Chitim shani toim. If you say both, aser ben lakus ben laapos, and you can't have it either way. Gris shani toim. Similarly, if you say gris shani toim, aser lavashal mutar lakus, right? You can't have it cooked in a bowl of grits, but you could chew it. Grisin shani toim, also lakus and mutar lavashal. Then you're answering the actual raw grits, the raw pieces of corn. Grisin shani toim, also ben lavashal ben lakus. If you say both of them, obviously you meant to answer in both fashions. Hadron lachanodim and avusha. We finished the 6th parak, Daf It Nedarim. Congratulations. Tomorrow, hopefully, we'll start the 7th parak, Daf It Nedarim and Yarok, taking people who don't want to benefit from vegetables, right? People don't want to eat meat, and there's people that don't want to eat vegetables. They only want to eat meat. It's like me. Those are the opposite, right? Nowadays, there's such a focus on being a vegan or vegetarian. You don't want to eat the meat. Some people are the opposite. Most people, when they grow up, they don't want to eat their mother, eat your broccoli, your spinach. No, they just want to eat the meat. They just want to eat the pasta, right? That's most people are like. So we'll talk about that, the most people, in the next paragraph. Hope you enjoyed tonight's share. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion. We'll talk about an interesting Gemara on Daf Gimel and Aleph, which seemingly doesn't hold to the svara of Rov when it comes to Nedarim. I'll try to explain it in a way that makes sense to me. Ian with Ben Sion coming up next.